Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Pallavi Bellamkonda. I'm cardiologist at St. Joseph's Dignity Health and Hospital and Medical Center. I'm assistant professor with Creighton University. I'm going to talk to you about intersection of breast cancer and cardiovascular disease. I have no disclosures. The objectives of this talk, I'm going to discuss about cardiovascular effects of anti-cancer medications, discuss a little bit about cardiodiagnostics and imaging that we use in our clinic, and any recent advances in cardio-oncology. Cardio-oncology is an evolving discipline that interfaces between cardiology and oncology. And as you know, cancer and heart disease are the highest causes of cardiac mortality after the age of 25 in our population. And we have had more and more survivors of cancer, which is a good thing, but the risk of heart disease among these survivors drastically increases. And as you see, the estimated number of cancer survivors in US is close to 20 million. And cardiotoxicity has become a complex and clinical challenge, and it is a major and economic health burden, given the number of increases in cancer survivors. The survival rate, the 5-year survival rate for breast cancer is close to 99% if it is localized and very early stages. And as you know, the survival rates depend on differentiation of the tumor. Is it well differentiated, poorly differentiated, as well as the extent of spread of disease. Why is cardio-oncology so important now? As we're discussing, the survival rate in breast cancer has improved drastically. And as you can see, as the mortality is decreasing among breast cancer patients, and this is due to good innovation and newer anti-cancer treatment options, the cardiovascular mortality gradually goes up, especially after 5-year survival up to 15 to 20-year survival. And about 20% of these patients that have received some sort of anti-cancer therapies may experience cardiac adverse effects, either in a very acute toxic form or as a late complication after 10 to 15 years after the diagnosis and treatment. And this cardiovascular risk varies depending on the therapeutic class and the types of agents that are being used. It also depends on if patient has had a pre-existing cardiac condition or other risk factors for heart disease. And a large number of cancer survivors are at higher risk of cardiotoxicity related death than of cancer recurrence itself. I do want to discuss a couple of patients, and this is one patient in our clinic. She's a pleasant 66-year-old lady, ER/PR negative with HER2 positive invasive breast cancer. And her risk factors for heart disease would include obesity and history of hypertension, for which she's on treatment with valsartan. She's had neoadjuvant chemotherapy with doxorubicin, Taxol, and she's had mastectomy. The doxorubicin, the dose is 240 milligrams per meter squared that she's received. And after mastectomy, she was started on trastuzumab along with 6 weeks of radiation therapy. She has been having fatigue and worsening dyspnea on exertion, along with decrease in exercise tolerance and edema. And for a couple of weeks now before her ER presentation, those symptoms have been worsening. Do have her echocardiogram. This is prior to the onset of the disease, as well as the plan of treatment, before we've started the chemotherapy. Overall heart pump function, the LV ejection fraction looks normal. Left ventricular size is normal. And this is during her ER visit, the second echocardiogram. This is the LV, the size has mildly increased, and there is a definite decrease in her heart function. The overall ejection fraction has decreased. So the definition of cardiotoxicity, it has 3 main criteria. The patient should have symptoms and signs of heart failure, which is dyspnea, chest pain, edema, And then there can be an asymptomatic reduction of LVEF of more than or equal to 10%, and an absolute decrease in LVEF of more than or equal to 16% compared to pre-treatment values. Any of these criteria, we um, attribute it to cardiotoxicity. So in initial evaluation at the cardio-oncology clinic, we deal with identifying patients who are at risk for any of the cardiovascular adverse effects. So if patient is receiving a higher dose of anthracycline, especially doxorubicin more than 250 milligrams per meter square, or epirubicin more than 600 milligrams per meter square, high dose of radiation therapy more than 30 gyrons, and where the heart is in, especially if the heart is in the treatment field. Lower dose anthracyclines and other agents can also cause cardiovascular disease, especially if patients are elderly, above 60 years, or if they've had other risk factors for coronary artery disease itself, like smoking, hypertension, diabetes, obesity, hyperlipidemia, or kidney disease. If patients have had previous heart disease, either coronary artery disease or heart failure, they're at a higher risk. And then elevated biomarkers, especially troponin or BNP, these are the biomarkers that we use in our clinic. And if these are elevated pre-treatment, then patients are at higher risk during the therapy or post-treatment. So in our cardio-oncology clinic, in the initial evaluation, we do a complete history, past medical history, family history, as well as any surgeries in the past. Along with a complete physical examination, we obtain an ECG. We look at blood levels of glucose, total cholesterol, kidney function, as well as biomarkers such as troponin and BNP. We obtain a baseline transthoracic echocardiogram to evaluate for LV and right ventricular size and function, any significant valvular abnormalities. We also have newer technology like 3D echocardiogram. And this 3D imaging has shown great accuracy and is very comparable to cardiac MRI, which is actually the gold standard for LV and RV evaluation. Strain imaging is a technology we use in our clinic, which I will talk about in a future slide briefly. And of course, cardiac MRI, especially if the quality of the transthoracic echo is suboptimal, we use cardiac MRI to evaluate for cardiac function. No cardio-oncology lecture is probably complete without referring to this study. Dr. Van Hoff has researched anthracycline-induced cardiotoxicity, and this is one of the earliest studies published in this field. As you can see, the risk of cardiotoxicity worsens with increasing dose of anthracycline therapy, especially the cutoff value, anything more than 414 milligrams per meter square, drastically worsens the possibility of heart failure in these patients. Coming to prevention of anthracycline cardiotoxicity, dextrazoxane is a medication that we can use, and it prevents the topo 2 beta conformational change that is caused by anthracyclines in cardiac sarcomeres. We can try the infusional administration, and this reduces toxicity, and it has shown significant changes in clinical studies. We also use liposomal encapsulation of anthracycline when we infuse, and this alters tissue distribution, but it has very similar efficacy. Studies have shown that anthracycline-induced cardiotoxicity and it can be reversible. In patients in whom we have had early diagnosis and treatment of heart failure, it does improve cardiac function. So in this study, about 42% of the patients have improved their heart function back to normal once the medications for heart failure have been started, and once there's been a discussion with the oncologist about holding 1 or 2 cycles of chemotherapy. So I was talking about early detection of heart failure in these patients receiving cardiotoxic chemo agents. We use this technology called strain imaging. And strain imaging really helps in the early detection of heart failure. As you probably know from physics, that as an elastic band increases in length, the strain is higher and becomes more positive in the band. The sarcomeres in the heart shorten during the cardiac contraction, which means we actually measure the strain in the cardiac muscle as it shortens. So a more negative number is better for heart function. So it indicates better heart function. And the normal values we use for cutoff is less than -18, which means more negative, -19, -20 indicates very good cardiac function. According to guidelines, we use LV ejection fraction, so a drop of 10 points to an LVEF less than 53% or more indicates cardiotoxic related chemotox. We use LVEF of less than 53% with a drop of 10 points. And if these criteria are fulfilled, then the patient meets criteria for cardiotoxicity. Also, looking at the global longitudinal strain as compared to baseline, if there is a drop of less than 8%, then there is no evidence of subclinical LV dysfunction. But if there is a drop or a change of more than 15%, then there is evidence of subclinical LV dysfunction in the patient. When we notice these changes in the echocardiogram, then we look for therapeutic interventions. We discuss with oncologists, do we modify the cancer treatment? Do we hold 1 or 2 cycles and recheck echocardiogram? Or are we thinking of stopping the chemo agent for now and then, or changing it to a different regimen? And we start them on cardioprotective medications, especially angiotensin receptor inhibitors, ARBs, and heart failure specific beta blockers. And further treatment of heart failure is based on the ACC and AHA guidelines. So it depends on the stage of the patient. Is the patient stage A, B, C, or D? And the symptoms and the medication changes, and we follow the guidelines for further treatment of advanced heart failure patients. Oncologists are finding innovative methods to treat cancer and to improve survival, quality of care, and overall mortality. And it is our job as cardio-oncologists to protect the heart from adverse effects and to make sure heart failure is not contributing to early mortality in these patients. And as you see, anthracyclines, HER2 inhibitors, VEGF inhibitors, proteasome inhibitors, immune checkpoint inhibitors, all these medications can cause cardiovascular adverse effects. And we as cardiologists, as cardio-oncologists, aim to identify these high-risk patients, contribute towards early detection and diagnosis, and look for treatment strategies. I have a second interesting patient that presented to my clinic with a history of cutaneous melanoma stage 3, and she was on nivolumab, and she presented with severe hypertriglyceridemia. Her cholesterol panel showed a total cholesterol 645 with HDL 23, LDL 78, and triglycerides very high at 3,971. And the normal cutoff is 150 for triglycerides. Nivolumab is an immune checkpoint inhibitor, and it has a known side effect of severe hypertriglyceridemia. And any values about 400 to 1000 can actually cause acute pancreatitis. And in this patient, in addition to lifestyle modifications, we started her on fibrate therapy as well as statins. Other options include omega-3 fatty acids and niacin. And after a period of 2 months, we repeated the fasting lipid panel, and the triglycerides have drastically improved to 334 milligrams per deciliter. And we held the nivolumab therapy in the meantime for the 2 months, And once we had the fasting lipid panel show improvement, it was deemed safe to restart the therapy. And if you see in our patient, 38-year-old patient with LDL of less than 180 milligrams per deciliter, guidelines in such patients do not usually recommend statin therapy. But it is really important to know the side effects of these chemo agents so that we can identify these patients and start treatment early on. VEGF inhibitors can cause hypertension, and unless we treat them early and in an aggressive manner, patients can have heart failure. We can use ACE inhibitors or ARBs, and as well as amlodipine as a preferred antihypertensive drug in such situations. Diltiazem and verapamil should be avoided mostly because of drug-to-drug interactions as well as mild negative inotrope effects. We follow protocols in the cardio-oncology clinic, especially for hypertension and other cardiovascular diseases. And we are always in contact with the oncologist based on what type of treatment protocol that we need to start. And we do want to discuss with oncologists to continue the cancer treatments because that really helps, obviously, in curing cancer. But we do want to find a good balance where the patient does not suffer from adverse cardiac events. There are anti-cancer therapy agents that can cause atrial fibrillation and other arrhythmias. Um, and the way we treat these patients, we discuss with patient and the oncologist regarding rate or rhythm control. And of course, we go for rhythm control if a patient continues to be symptomatic or patients are hemodynamically unstable. And if cancer treatment has been completed and there is low probability that they would revert back to atrial fibrillation, we discuss rhythm control in these patients. And we also talk to them about oral anticoagulation, especially if these cancers are abdominal cancers, pancreatic cancer, etc. When the risk of thromboembolic events are really high, then in these patients, if the CHA2DS2-VASc score is even on the low side, less than 2 or equal to 2, we recommend oral anticoagulation as long as the bleeding risk is low. Another group of medications that can cause cardiac side effects is immune checkpoint inhibitors, and they can cause myocarditis. And the way we recognize is patients coming in with chest pains, dyspnea on exertion, they have EKG changes, echocardiogram changes. The gold standard is again endomyocardial biopsy or cardiac MRI. And this, it remains pretty challenging because some of these patients, the cardiac MRI can come back normal, but on endocardial biopsy can still show some signs of myocarditis. There can be EKG changes compared to baseline. The top EKG is baseline with normal PR interval, no PVCs or arrhythmias, and the bottom EKG shows lengthened PR interval with first degree AV block as well as occasional PVCs in this patient. We have algorithms for the myocarditis as well. So it's very important to recognize this early on so that we can hold the immune checkpoint inhibitor medications, initiate steroids in these patients. And once we have the absolute diagnosis, we can go forward with further treatment. Do we do very high dose pulse therapy in these patients? I also want to discuss a radiation-related heart disease. Patients who receive radiation to the chest, especially breast cancer patients, lymphoma patients, lung cancer or esophageal cancer, and other cancers such as thymoma, mesothelioma, sarcoma, and spinal cancers. Studies have shown that once patient has received radiation therapy, the chance of cardiovascular side effects actually worsens after 10 years. And the longer we study these patients, the radiation effects of cardiovascular disease gets worse. As well as the mean dose of radiation to the heart makes a difference to the worsening of cardiac events. So increase in LAD calcification, coronary atherosclerosis are hastened in these patients. We use techniques to reduce heart dose. So prone positioning, deep inspiration, breath hold, proton beam, all these techniques reduce the total, it removes the heart from the field of radiation, as well as it decreases the radiation dose to the heart. And this would improve the cardiovascular profile of these patients, even 10 years, 15 years down the road. So, just as in clinical trials, even in our daily practice, cardio-oncologists, we collaborate with oncology to try to balance the treatment of cancer along with improving cardiac outcomes in our patients. And the ultimate goal would be improving the quality of care as well as mortality in our patients. Thank you, and we'll await your questions.